The waiter hadn't even finished pouring the champagne when she said it. For words, into a mic, in front of a room full of people, while standing behind a birthday cake she didn't even bake. I'm in love again. At first, people clapped. They thought it was poetic, romantic, a toast. I smiled too, stupid, naive, blinking like an idiot under the soft golden lights of the winery's private room. I thought she meant me. Why wouldn't she? The applause died slower than her next sentence. I never planned to fall for him. I swear the air changed. Like the windows were open and someone had just slammed them shut. I looked at her. Still smiling. Still beautiful. Lipstick just slightly smeared on the right side. She was holding that mic like it was a trophy. Or maybe a weapon. Some people chuckled nervously. My aunt, bless her, even shouted, "Ah," as if this was a wedding speech. It wasn't. She didn't blink when she said it. Clayton, I didn't want to lie anymore. I looked at the mic. I looked at the crowd. Then I looked at her, my wife, as she stepped away from the cake table and reached out her hand, not toward me. No, she was holding it out to someone behind me. And in that moment, before I even turned around, I already knew. This wasn't a party. This was a burial. And I was the one getting buried alive. I turned around slower than I'd like to admit. My legs felt numb, but it wasn't from shock, not exactly. It was more like my body had entered this dream state where nothing felt real, like walking through a heavy fog underwater. And there he was, sitting at one of the round tables near the back, still chewing. Yeah, chewing. Everyone else in the room was frozen, staring at Addison like she'd just announced a murder. But he was mid-bite on a deviled egg, elbow on the table, napkin tucked in the collar of his shirt like he was at some southern fish fry. He didn't flinch, didn't drop the food, just kept chewing. His name was Desmond. Desmond was my coworker. No, scratch that. He was my subordinate. A guy I'd taken under my wing, coached, defended when he almost got Ken last quarter for botching a regional report. I'd literally stood in a meeting room and said, "Give Des a second chance. He just needs guidance." Turns out what he needed was my wife. I stared at him for what felt like a year. He finally swallowed, wiped his mouth, and said, "Clayton, man, I didn't want it to happen like this." Oh, great. So there was a plan. I turned back to Addison. She was stepping down from the little stage now, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor like she was descending from some royal throne. "I told you," she said gently, as if I was some fragile animal. "You always said you wanted honesty." That made something snap in me. I wanted honesty? Sure. But not dropped like a live grenade at my own birthday party in front of friends, family, co-workers, my childhood piano teacher, and a couple of people I didn't even recognize, who now probably think I deserve this just for wearing khakis with a belt. I walked toward the door. Nobody stopped me, not even Addison. I guess she figured she'd already taken the big risk, so what's a little public walkout to add to the drama? But just before I grabbed the handle, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Desmond said, "He's gonna find out everything anyway." Everything. I paused. I shouldn't have paused. I should have kept walking. But that sentence, it burned itself into my skull. What everything? Wasn't this it? The betrayal, the affair, the public ambush? Apparently not. I opened the door, walked into the cold. No jacket. Again, just me and the crumbling foundation of everything I thought I knew. My car was parked down the block, but I couldn't bring myself to go there. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from embarrassment, from the sheer ridiculousness of the entire scene. And yeah, okay, I cried. Not a big manly movie tear. No, this was the ugly kind. The full body, chest caving kind. And it came fast. I had barely made it to the sidewalk when I had to sit on the curb, face in my hands, just leaking. I could still hear them through the glass, muffled chatter, forks clinking. The party didn't stop. Not really. A few people were probably awkwardly making excuses, pretending it hadn't happened, just trying to finish their lemon bars and leave with some dignity. But me? I didn't have any left. The love of my life stood in front of our entire social circle and announced she was in love with a guy who wears novelty socks and once used synergy in a non-ironic sentence during a company retreat. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. Because 2 days later, something showed up in my email. Something I wasn't supposed to see. And what I found, it made the mic drop moment look like the opening act. 2 days after the party, I hadn't spoken to Addison. Not a text, not a call, not even a receipt for the party invoice. which I later found out had been charged to my personal card. I didn't go home. I stayed at my brother's place, where his guest bed is shaped like a race car because he has twin boys and no one expected me to be the one crashing there. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. I'm in love again. That morning, I opened my email not to work, but to start forwarding things to HR. I was going to ask to be moved to another regional team, maybe even request some leave. I couldn't sit across the hallway from Desmond without wanting to punch drywall, and I'm not even the punchy type. I'm the kind of guy who watches documentaries about medieval ink. Seriously, that's where I was emotionally. Anyway, somewhere in the middle of dozens of unread threads, calendar invites, and follow-up emails, I saw one with no subject. No sender name. Just an address. Jmuller 9634 at, something like that. It didn't ring a bell. The email had no body text. Just an attachment. A zip file called You Should Know. Zip. Now, every part of me screamed not to open it. I mean, I'm not a complete idiot. I know how phishing works. But the timing? The name? The mystery of it? My fingers were already downloading before my brain caught up. I scanned it for viruses first. It came back clean. Inside the folder, 6 screenshots, 2 PDFs, 1 video. The screenshots were from text messages, all from Addison's phone, judging by the blue bubbles. But they weren't messages to Desmond. These were to someone named Jay. That's all it said. And from what I could piece together, this conversation didn't start after our marriage fell apart. It started before we were even engaged. In one screenshot, dated 3 weeks before our wedding, Addison wrote, "We're going through with it. He has money now. He just got the promotion. Be patient." In another, "He suspects nothing. I'll play my part." My blood ran cold. I sat back in the chair, every limb tingling. What the hell was I reading? This wasn't just cheating. This was planning. Strategy. Something built. I opened the PDFs. The first one was a wire transfer receipt from my joint account with Addison, made 4 months ago. $8,200 to a consulting firm in South Carolina I'd never heard of. Description: professional services, discretionary. The second PDF? A signed rental agreement. A lease in her name and someone else's. A condo 2 cities over. Desmond didn't live there, but Jay Muller did. The video, that was the hardest part. It was a security cam clip, clearly exported from a Nest or Ring system. Time-stamped. 8 days before the party. Addison, standing at a door. Not our door. Holding a bag. Jay answers. She kisses him, and not in the hello friend way. This was familiar. Intimate. And then she walked inside. The clip ends there. Cold. I sat in that race car bed, laptop on my lap, heart in my throat. I don't know what kind of sick universe this was, but somehow the guy she told the world about, Desmond, wasn't even the real story. He was a decoy, a front, a dramatic distraction while the real betrayal was kept quietly on the sidelines. And the worst part? I had no idea who Jay was. No last name. No face from that short, angled camera. Nothing to go on. Just a sinking feeling that my entire marriage, no, my entire life for the past decade, had been a stage. A performance where I was the only person who didn't know the script. But something told me, the email sender did, and I was going to find them. I didn't leave the house that day. I didn't even eat. I just sat with the folder open on my laptop, replaying that silent doorbell video over and over like it held a clue I hadn't caught the first 20 times. Addison steps into frame. Smiles. Waits. Jay. Opens the door. Kiss. Step inside. Cut. It looped in my head with clinical coldness. Not a trace of hesitation in her body language. That was the part that hurt the most. She looked at home. The race car bed creaked every time I shifted my weight. I hated the stupid thing. My nephews loved it. To them, it was a spaceship or a monster truck or whatever their imaginations turned it into. But for me, it was a reminder that I was exactly where I didn't belong. A full-grown man, reduced to the guest room at his younger brother's house, hiding from a life he used to be proud of. I didn't tell anyone about the email. Not my brother, not HR, not even my best friend Jonah, who kept texting me things like, "You good, man? Wanna grab wings?" What was I supposed to say? Hey, remember how my wife nuked my birthday party? Turns out that was just a teaser trailer. But around 10:43 p.m., the mysterious emailer struck again. New message. Same address. No subject. This time, the body of the email had text. Just one line. Don't let her find out you got this. My chest locked up. Just reading it felt like someone was watching me through the window. I stood up and closed the blinds without thinking. I even covered the webcam on my laptop. I know that sounds paranoid, and maybe it was, but something about that message felt direct. Like it wasn't just advice. It was a warning. Attached was a file. This time, a single audio recording labeled October 19_call. M4. I hesitated before playing it. I waited until the house was dead silent. My brother had gone to sleep, the boys were tucked away, and the only light was the screen glow. I put in headphones. Hit play. At first, nothing. Then, Addison's voice. It's not about love anymore. You know that, right? A pause. Shuffling. A male voice, not Desmond. Deeper. More controlled. You're still on script. That's what matters. Addison again. Lower. Nervous now. But he's going to find the account. He's not stupid. The man. Then let him. It'll be too late by then. Click. End of recording. That was it. 34 seconds of casual, cold betrayal. Addison, speaking like I was a chess piece being moved by strangers who already knew the final move. On script? What script? And what account? It was at that moment something broke in me. Not a clean break. Not a collapse. More like a hairline fracture. A slow, invisible splintering that starts at the center and works its way out, silently. I couldn't trust anyone now. Not even myself. My own memory of the last 6 years, it started to feel unreliable. Like maybe I'd missed signs. Or maybe I chose not to see them. And that's when I realized. This wasn't an affair. It was a setup. A long con. I couldn't just ask her. She'd deny it. She'd spin it. She'd weaponize the truth and make it sound like paranoia. That's what she does. She's smart. Smarter than me, maybe. But whoever was emailing me, they were smart too. They wanted me to uncover this piece by piece. So I made a choice. I stopped thinking like a husband. And I started thinking like a detective. By the next morning, the guest room looked nothing like the room my nephews usually sleep in. I had pulled the comforter off the race car bed and used it to pin up a printed screenshot grid on the wall. I laid out the PDFs across the toy chest, plugged in a second monitor that my brother wasn't using, and opened 3 spreadsheets I built from scratch. One to track Addison's known transactions, one to track references to Jay in anything I could find, and one that I labeled simply, Script Connections. I wasn't just trying to figure out who she cheated with anymore. I was hunting for the architecture of something. I know how that sounds, like some crazy ex spiraling down a rabbit hole of imaginary patterns. But if you heard that recording, if you saw that emotionless exchange between her and whoever the hell Jay is, you wouldn't be so quick to call it delusion. This wasn't love gone bad. This was a house built on paperwork, planning, and pretense. And I had the blueprints now. I just had to learn how to read them. I started digging through our joint bank account history. Not just the obvious charges, but recurring micropayments, account transfers between banks we rarely used. That's when I saw it. A monthly recurring $211. 37 charge, labeled CLF Digital Archives. Started 11 months ago. I'd seen it before, but figured it was a subscription of hers, some storage app or cloud service. But this time, I Googled it. Nothing came up. Not a company site. Not a business registry. Nothing. But when I reverse searched the merchant ID, I found a small archive blog post from 2018. It was written by a woman, an investigative hobbyist, who claimed CLF Digital Archives was a shell company used to hide personal data behind encrypted online platforms. Specifically, it was allegedly used to store surveillance footage, call logs, message backups, stuff that couldn't risk going through typical cloud services. Her blog was deleted a year later. The only thing left was a Wayback Machine snapshot. But there it was. Used primarily by individuals involved in legal loopholes, covert operations, or untraceable manipulation campaigns. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the screen for a full minute. I wasn't breathing right. My chest felt like it was filling with something sharp. What the hell had I been living in? Some Truman Show? Some long-haul gaslighting performance? I thought back to all the times Addison would come home late and blame last-minute meetings. Or when she'd be irritable out of nowhere and then act overly affectionate. Like she was doing damage control for emotions I hadn't even expressed yet. There were moments I chalked up to marriage fatigue, or just miscommunication. Now they looked like resets in a performance. Like a script was being edited on the fly. The door creaked. My brother, Nate, popped his head in. You, working on something? I shut the second monitor a little too fast. Yeah, work project. He didn't press. He just nodded, slowly, like he could feel something was wrong, but had no idea where to begin. That's the thing about betrayal like this. You can't explain it to people. Not really. It sounds like melodrama until it's their world burning down. After he left, I reopened the script connections doc. I created a column for observed behaviors and another for anomalies. I filled them out like a lunatic. March 3rd, she cried over a text I never saw. April 18th, she forgot her anniversary gift. First time in 6 years. May 9th, she called me David in her sleep. My name is Clayton. I don't know a David. And then I remembered something else. There was a time, maybe 4 months ago, when I woke up to the sound of Addison talking softly in the living room. It was around 2:30 a.m. I assumed it was a phone call. But when I stepped out and looked, there was no phone in her hand. Just her, sitting cross-legged on the floor, facing the blank TV screen, whispering to nothing. When she saw me, she startled, jumped up, smiled, kissed me, and said, "Sorry, babe, couldn't sleep. I was just watching something." I didn't question it. I should have. I wrote that night down too. Labeled it Black Screen Incident. I was in deep now. Paranoia had fused with purpose. My hands were trembling, but I wasn't tired. I wasn't broken. I was hooked. Whatever Addison was involved in, whatever this script was, I wasn't going to be just another confused husband left holding ashes and memories. No, I was going to burn the whole script down. But before I could, another email arrived. This one had no attachment. Just 4 words. Check your attic crawl space. I stared at those 4 words like they were written in blood. Check your attic crawl space. I hadn't been in the attic since we bought the house. It was just one of those places you never think about after the boxes are shoved in and forgotten. I hadn't even remembered we had a crawl space inside it. It was one of those little side compartments built between insulation and beams, made for cables and pipes, not people. I wouldn't have thought twice about it if not for the precision of the message. Not check your attic. Not look upstairs. No, someone knew exactly where something had been hidden. I waited until Nate left for work the next morning. I told him I'd be going to the office, but instead I circled back to my own house, the one I still technically owned half of, even if it no longer felt like mine. Addison was at work. I had maybe 4 hours, 5 at most, before she returned. I parked a block away and entered through the back, using the old key under the fake rock she never remembered I kept. The silence inside was oppressive. The furniture was still arranged the same. The scent of her citrus candles still lingered faintly, but everything felt hollow, like I'd stepped into a memory that wasn't mine anymore. The house was too clean. No dishes. No laundry in the hallway basket. Too perfect, like it had been staged. I climbed the attic ladder slowly, flashlight in hand. The air was stale and warm, filled with that soft itchiness that only comes from insulation dust and fiberglass. I crawled on my elbows to the far wall, where the narrow wooden door to the crawl space sat slightly ajar. That detail alone chilled me. I hadn't been up here in years, and Addison was terrified of spiders. She wouldn't come up here willingly. I pushed it open and aimed the light inside. There was a box. Plain. Cardboard. No labels. I pulled it toward me and opened it. Inside, 2 black notebooks, 1 sealed envelope, and a USB drive wrapped in a baby blue ribbon. The same kind we used on our wedding invitations. I didn't open anything up there. I couldn't. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the whole thing down the attic ladder. I made my way down, secured the door behind me, and stuffed the box into my backpack. As I left, I locked the door behind me, took one last look at the home I once thought I'd grow old in, and walked straight out without a single glance backward. Back at Nate's, I shut myself in the guest room and placed everything on the floor like evidence in a crime scene. I opened the first notebook. Page after page of handwriting. Addison's, but not her usual penmanship. This was more clinical, as if she was transcribing something dictated to her. Notes. Instructions. Names. Dates. Even times. One entry read, March 12 to 6:15 p.m. He asks about the closed laptop again. I deflect with a joke. He accepts the distraction. Note, it's still working. I flip to another. April 27th. He mentions hearing a recording. That wasn't me. Jay says it's secure, but I should adjust sleep meds. Reduce contact window to 6-day cycles. Sleep meds? Contact window? What the hell was she even tracking? I opened the second notebook. It was almost identical in layout, but this one included diagrams, floor plans, our house, my office, even the cafe where we had our first date, complete with marked tables, labeled seating arrangements, and timestamps written in red ink. There were other places too. A co-working space I visited once in a while. The lobby of my gym. All marked. All analyzed. Someone had been watching me. Not just Addison. Not just Desmond. But a network. A system. I opened the sealed envelope next. Inside, a photo. A photo of me. Sitting on a park bench. Wearing the gray coat I lost months ago. Taken from behind. I didn't recognize the angle or the bench. There was no note. No caption. Then I plugged in the USB. It held one folder. Inside, for audio recordings. Labeled session_Clayton_01 through session_Clayton_04. Session 1 was dated over a year ago. I played it. Addison's voice. Calm. Measured. Subject is unaware of primary loop. Behavioral patterns remain unchanged. Stress triggers remain responsive to guilt and embarrassment cues. Suggested adjustment. Introduce new stressor under controlled environment. Session 2. Subject did not respond to the birthday forget test. No reaction. J. Recommends elevating stakes. Next trial will involve emotional exposure. Public setting preferred. Note. Observe response to indirect betrayal. Session 3. Desmond insertion successful. He remains unaware of long-term role. Emotional attachment remains low, controllable. Subject continues to misplace anger appropriately. Script is holding. I paused. I couldn't breathe. I was the subject. This wasn't a love story gone wrong. It was an experiment. And Addison? She was the lead observer. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even pretend to try. I sat on the floor next to the box, back against the guest room wall, just breathing, or trying to. My thoughts weren't linear anymore. They jumped around like sparks from a live wire, touching everything, igniting memory after memory that now made a sick kind of sense. Every little argument, every apology that felt rehearsed, every coincidence that I brushed off, it wasn't bad luck or misunderstanding. It was direction. It was a script. And I had been cast without my knowledge. The phrase, primary loop, stuck with me the most. Like I wasn't a person, but a pattern. Something they were observing, modifying, testing. And they wasn't just Addison. That much was clear now. She may have been the voice in the recordings, but someone, or something, was feeding her instructions, managing her, managing me. I had to know who Jay was. So I went back to the USB. There was metadata on the audio files. I hadn't checked that the first time. I pulled up the file properties, clicked into the advanced details, and there it was. Author, J. M. / log device, console. MNR, D06. That wasn't a regular user tag. It read like a hardware terminal. Something local. Encrypted. I copied the device string and began digging. It took me hours. I jumped across private forums, corporate registry leaks, defunct network mapping tools that hadn't been patched in years. Finally, I found a mention of the console, MNRD class, in an archived forum post under a CyberOps thread. It was tied to a company, a private research entity called Mannerage Systems, which had dissolved in 2019. The post mentioned them in the context of human behavioral analysis contracts. Not military, not medical, just private partners. Mannerage. I never heard of them. But the thread linked to an old internal pitch deck, probably leaked by an ex-employee. I downloaded it. The title on the first slide stopped me cold. Predictive Loop Conditioning. Applied Scenarios for Civilian Integration. It described a series of psychological field tests involving long-term relationship dynamics, trust erosion, and emotional response conditioning, all under the guise of everyday domestic life. The subjects didn't know they were being studied. The partners were trained observers, trained handlers. One section detailed a system they called mirror script, a feedback loop where the subject would unknowingly experience escalating emotional sabotage, while every behavioral reaction was recorded, cataloged, and then tested again in slightly altered forms. The goal? Not just observation. Behavioral rewrite. I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing. The room spun for a second. I leaned forward and rested my forehead against the cool surface of the laptop. I knew this couldn't be real. It couldn't. It sounded insane. But I had the notebooks. I had the files. The photos. The voice recordings. I had proof. And I had Addison. No, not had. She was gone. Emotionally, physically, intellectually. Whatever relationship we shared had been overwritten, repurposed. But I still had access. I still had leverage. So I made a decision. I texted her. For the first time since the party. We need to talk. Today. At the old cafe. No games. She replied instantly. I thought you'd say that. 3 p.m. Don't be late. That scared me. Not the speed, but the certainty. As if she'd been waiting for this exact message. Like it was scheduled. And maybe it was. I showed up early. Sat at the back corner table, the one with the loose chair that always squeaked when you moved. I watched the door. When Addison walked in, she wasn't dressed like herself. No vibrant colors, no soft curls in her hair. Just a gray coat, tied tight, face clean of makeup. No jewelry. She looked neutral. She sat down across from me and didn't smile. Did you open the box? She asked, before I even said hello. I nodded. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She just exhaled slowly and looked past me, like she was watching a memory play out behind my head. You weren't supposed to find it yet, she said quietly. We had protocols. But Desmond, he rushed the trigger. He wasn't cleared for escalation. He got emotional. You always brought that out of people. I stared at her like I was looking at someone I'd never met. Because I was. Everything I'd ever loved, every warm moment we shared, it had all been built on top of this. A lab experiment. A job. I was your husband, I said, my voice cracking. She finally looked at me. No, she said. You were a profile. That sentence felt like it reached inside me and pulled something out. Something soft. Something human. And it crushed it. I stood up. You think this ends here? I said. You think you still control the script? Addison's face didn't change, but her hands moved. She slid a small card across the table. Just a name. No number. No logo. Just 3 embossed letters. J. M. R. He's expecting you now, she said. I stared at the card in my hand for a long time after she left. J. M. R. No number, no address, no context. Just letters. Like a final riddle from someone who had been directing my life from the shadows. I thought about tearing it up right there in the cafe, just letting it dissolve into coffee-stained napkins and forgotten receipts. But I didn't. Not out of fear. Out of curiosity. I took the card home. And by home, I mean Nate's guest room, which now looked more like a conspiracy bunker than a bedroom. I set it down on the desk and just stared at it while the rest of the world moved on. The sky dimmed. The streetlights blinked on. Somewhere across town, Addison was probably logging her final report. Or maybe not. Maybe she was as done with this as I was. Maybe she had never been the villain, just another cog, another profile in someone else's game. But here's the thing about games. Eventually, someone flips the board. I didn't call the number on the card because there wasn't one. Instead, I searched everything. I dug through forums, old directories, scanned through thousands of PDF leaks. I even cold emailed a data analyst who had once written a whistleblower post about autonomous social conditioning trials before her blog mysteriously disappeared. Days passed, then a week, and then nothing. And maybe that was the answer. Maybe he had vanished too. Maybe the project collapsed. Or maybe they knew I had everything I needed to burn them down and chose to retreat instead. Either way, I stopped chasing. Because eventually, something shifted inside me. It didn't happen all at once. It wasn't some dramatic moment in the mirror where I declared a new life or shaved my head or burned the notebooks. No, it was subtle, quiet. It started with one morning where I woke up and didn't immediately reach for the files. A day when I made eggs just because I wanted to. A jog that turned into a routine. A laugh that didn't feel fake. I started writing again, not emails or revenge plans, but thoughts. Pages. Eventually, a journal. The kind that wasn't meant to be weaponized. Then, I moved out of Nate's house and into a little rental 2 towns over. No cameras. No hidden microphones. Just a coffee maker, a cat I named Echo, and a messy bookshelf with half-read novels. I took a new job. Smaller firm. Less prestige. More breathing room. My first day, my new boss said, "We value peace of mind more than hustle." And I almost cried. I didn't tell my coworkers about Addison. Not at first. But eventually, I told one person. Then another. Not the spy movie version, just the emotional truth. I was married to someone who wasn't really with me. But I'm still here. And that's the part one want to end with. I'm still here. I'm not broken. Not anymore. I'm stitched together with scar tissue and lessons, but I'm whole. I don't need revenge. I don't need to understand every part of the game I was pulled into. Because surviving it, waking up from it, was enough. One day, maybe I'll meet someone new. And maybe I'll trust again, slowly, imperfectly. I won't pretend I'm not changed. But I also won't pretend I'm ruined. Because when they tried to rewrite me, they underestimated one thing. I was never the subject. I'm the author now. And this time, I write the script.